working. Click on the old chat button there. I'll check around there to make sure I'm getting paid. Make sure to check you're getting paid there, lads, as well.
I
Oh,
did.
I never bother.
You have to click it on.
Yeah, you do. And
I don't even know how to click it on.
just go into YouTube Studio and then
Ah.
go over to live.
Channel content live.
Yeah.
I
And
can't
then-
bother with all that. I never did.
I don't like money anyway. My one was turned off. Then I went and checked. Sure, what's money for? Drinking.
I pay the ex-wife and kids.
Aye.
Money for the kids. Money's for the kids.
Yeah, that's all right. But she's welcome to it. I don't earn enough for me to feel precious about it. Like,
I was Dennis this morning. Oh, that's good. You can all hear us anyway. It's the main thing. Kevin, how are you keeping, Kevin? Bye.
Dennis gave me a great tour of Kinsale
Oh, nice.
and the battlefield and the stuff of Kinsale last weekend, last Monday. It was great. It was great.
Aye.
Thanks,
Wayne, how are you
Hi,
keeping?
Wayne. Hi, Kevin.
Any news? Wayne's going to lecture us this morning on the O'Briens. What was it called? But you're going to have to go in the comment section and read it. Because Wayne's favourite faction in all of the island of Ireland is the O'Briens, isn't it, Wayne?
Poor Wayne's only just in and he's already been bullied.
What do you mean? It's true. He does like the O'Briens. What was it called? Jim, how are you keeping by? Any news on yourself, Jim? I posted up the O'Briens on the title thing, just as a
Thanks,
starter
Dennis.
thing.
It was great. It was great. I recommend Dennis's tours at Kinsale.
Is that good,
And
is it?
especially from his farm, you get a great overview of the town of Kinsale and the very important places in the battle.
Oh, really?
It's great. Yeah.
Aye. That's not bad, actually. How much is he charging, is he? Oh, it's wee second there. I do love the O'Briens, indeed, says Wayne. Where was he? I was doing one of the live streams the other day, and I just saw, what was it called? Wayne bitching about the O'Briens like there's no tomorrow. And I remember then the following day, Owen, you were bitching about the O'Briens as well. You absolutely love them as well, don't you?
Oh, yeah. It's great to bitch about them. Usurpers.
I like the O'Briens. The O'Briens are awesome. Remember, it was the reason why we're all here today is because Brian Brood, you know?
I mean,
very impressed.
He left things in a mess. He smashed the system and didn't replace it with anything.
I mean, to be fair, like we've really been in Leinster for that.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Is that not Dermot McMurray? What was it, Dermot McMail the Moore? He was some boy.
You know, Dublin. You know, they all have a part to play. Well, we're saying Northern Leinster because obviously Southern Leinster didn't rebel, but mainly because I think Brian Bruce's son was patrolling around there, making sure they didn't. But I mean, to be fair, yeah, like you said, if he hadn't messed it up, if he just left the e-nail to rule in Ireland, we probably would have had a better system in place. So, just saying, the e-nail peak.
You need a Murphy. Oh, aye, that would be the Murphys of Cork by. What was it called?
Is -9, Jim, -9 Fahrenheit or -9 Celsius centigrade? Because I know what that is in centigrade. I don't know if -9 Fahrenheit is cold or not. Because I can't. The system it's so nuts. 3 feet of snow, very nice.
My brain is waking up this morning, lads. I tell you that.
I'm so not. I'm still not in the back into like getting back into all this. It's still like brain just doesn't want to compute to it all.
Yeah.
Centigrade. Thank you. Okay, -9 centigrade. And is it -12? Ooh, that's cold.
It's cold here as well in Okinawa, but I kept all the windows and stuff closed this morning, so it's nice and warm inside the home, in the apartment anyway.
Now Jim is saying Fahrenheit. They're operating with two systems just to confuse us.
Just I'm not interacting with that stuff. I just nod my head. Anytime the chat gets too confusing, I'm just like, oh, that's nice, chat. Oh, okay, chat. It's the same thing with some of the surnames of the minor lords and stuff. When people start asking me about various surnames, I'm just like, oh, that seems like a very nice surname. And then I'm just like, well, we cover clans and dynasties on the weekend, so definitely pop on then. I know there was meant to be a woman jumping on to go and what was it called? Interrogate Mihal for the morning. I think she was talking about the Moors or something. She's not on now anyway, but she'll probably be on later, unless she pops up in the chat now.
And which Moor she is? She an English Moor, an Irish Moor?
So Wayne has good Australian summer weather, 33 degrees centigrade.
Yeah, he's loving life there. Nice and warm this morning.
33 degrees centigrade.
Remember the harp ad? Sally O'Brien from the 1980s. You could fry an egg.
I actually remember watching that.
Yeah. That's the weather Wayne is having at the moment.
Wayne's loving it, like. Happy out. Head melting. Ooh. I remember I was like that over the summer, and obviously the wife was telling me, Philip, you need to do A, B, and C. And I was just, what was it called? If you don't, you'll start getting a heat stroke. And I just remember side my face just being like, oh, that's terrible. So hot. It was crazy. Like,
give me a second.
I'll take your time. Because there's a good few branches of the O'Briens. It's not like it was all of the O'Briens that were up in Providence. There was bound to be some O'Briens that stayed Catholic, wasn't there? Though
a few. Some stayed Jacobites, but the main ones stayed Protestant and very Anglicized. The Earls of Thomond and Lord Infrequent.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember the O'Briens stretched all the way. I mean, they had a small branch. Whether these actually had kin or not, I don't know. But you had branches up in Tullyhawk, in Tyrone. You had branches settling in the Isle of Man. You had branches settling all the way in Wexford. So not all of these were centralized and held over by a specific lordship. They would have held different religious beliefs and political beliefs, and it's the same with the butlers. Very famously, we attribute the butlers. Often we encompass them all as and the butlers did this because it would lend more towards English crime. But very famously, there are cadet branches of the butlers that often defied the political line or religious line of the main branch. So, it's very easy to encompass them all.
In the 9 Years' War, Lord Mountgarrett, and then Lord Kerr and his brother, and then two of the Earl of Ormond's nephews. They were all with O'Neill. Ormond even hung one of his own nephews. Sort of.
Yeah, nice lad. Yeah, I think I remember that all right. But wasn't that for his own claim to his own kingship or something? Wasn't it?
Well, this was in 1590 something. It was because they were rebelling. Those nephews were good friends, I think, with Fiach Mac Hugh.
Yeah.
Sort of, and then it starts getting into little feuding, which is complicated.
Yeah. It's fun, lads. All for the kingship. Who cares about the rest of the country? As long as you're a king of your little piece of land, huh?
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the butlers have a really good record keeping when it comes to land tracts and land holdings, and they had a whole book on it, which is still, you can read it today, and it goes back a couple of centuries at least. So, so it's really, if you want to see that sort of I'll need to find out what it's called, what they called it. I think it's called like the Ormond land tracts or something. It's but anyway, yeah, it's a really good. If you read through that, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's heavy reading, but you can get an idea of just how broken down and the political sort of things going on in their heads when they're handing out land, when they're land, when they're etc. So it's it's really interesting. I mean, and you can see how they grant lands to Irish families, and why, and then you sort of look into why they're doing it, and creating frontiers. The O'Maras are a good example of that. The O'Mara family, originally from Kilkenny, end up in Upper Ormond. To basically be like a frontier force against the O'Kennedys. So they're moving Irish families, granting Irish families land and title, purely because it probably on the ground it works better for them to have an Irish family policing another Irish family rather than a Norman overlord having to get involved in the local politics.
Yeah. It's a good question there. I let what was it called? Owen deal with this one. How did Gaelic Irish law, Brehon law, shape everyday life in medieval Ireland compared to Norman rule? I'm assuming there you're talking about Norman rule that was introduced into the southeast of the island and what ultimately would have been the difference in the 13th century on the southeast side of the island compared to the northwest. I'm assuming that's the way he's kind of wording the question.
Yeah.
Owen.
It would have had a number of aspects. If you were a lord, one of the main things was land holding, because in England, under English law, you owned the land, and then it would go on to your heir. Whereas in Gaelic law, you owned some land but not other land. Some land belonged to the particular lordship. So whoever was lord of Dungannon, whoever was lord of Thomond, would there be certain lands inherent to that. And when a lord died, like say the Earl of Ormond died, the next Earl of Ormond would inherit everything. Whereas in Gaelic law, it would sometimes be broken up, sometimes it'd be redistributed, sometimes the lordship would jump completely. Like Shane O'Neill, when he died, the lordship went to Turloughlinic, who was from the west of Tyrone. The second thing was that whereas under English law, who inherited the title was the eldest son or the eldest surviving son. In Gaelic law, no. There was the Derbfin, a large group of men who legally were entitled to become the next lord, and there was a lot of hassle, a lot of toing and froing about that. And if you were a more ordinary person, I think the way it most directly affected you was the law. The amount of crimes under English law that were punishable with death was very, very high. Whereas Breton law, although murders, etc., would often be hung by a lord, often informally, Breton law had a more, what's the best word? Restorative view. So if you stole someone's cows, you had to pay a fine, stuff like that, as opposed to being hung. So you could say that there was a more gentle, I don't know if that's the best word, there was a legal system, you were subject to a legal system that was inherent to, that had grown up in the society and was used to it. And like final thing, sort of, there was a prejudice in a lot of Norman / English law. against Gaelic culture, against Gaelic Ireland. Um, this prejudice didn't happen with Gaelic law.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, all right, before 1366, the way that there's a whole load of mixing going from the get-go between the southern eastern areas. But I definitely would agree with you there. From all the research and reading I've done so far, when it comes down to the inheritance of land and stuff, they seem to keep to more of the old French English law, um, it, and not keep to the Brehon law and stuff. Brehon law seems to affect the southeastern areas of more of the lower classes, though, and lower disputes and stuff. But it seems to me that when it comes down to noble level in Ireland in the 13th century, they seem to keep to the English laws, and then for the
Yeah,
lower disputes, they seem to bring in the
I,
Brehons and
I
stuff.
would say it varied a lot over time. So
Yeah,
you have the initial entrance of the Normans, the Cambro Normans, whatever you want to call them, their initial
yeah,
entrance into Ireland,
mm,
and like it's boom, suddenly they capture Dublin, they spread into Meath, what's Kildare now, into Ulster, into Munster. You have this sudden thing, and out of that emerges Ormond, Kildare, the Archbishop of Ulster, etc., and
mm,
then the Anglo-Norman towns. But with the Gaelic resurgence after the Black Death, that kind of retreats a lot.
mm,
Um, and then, like, you would have only had a certain number of English judges. And I
yeah,
think, sort of, it's if there was a Gaelic judge there and was handy enough, they would use him.
mm, mm,
Um,
mm,
and like, mo- the English, the levels of English speaking varied a lot. Like in Wexford, etc., there was a lot of English speaking or Flemish speaking settlers.
mm,
Um, Maybe in Desmond, there would have been less of those.
yeah.
Um, Sorry, Jim is asking something, saying in medieval Ireland, they thought they possessed the land and not owned the land. It varied dramatically.
Mm,
Um, like, if you take a big lordship such as McCarthy Moore, Thomond, uh, Tyrconnell, Tyrone,
mm,
um, where you have sub branches, there would have been an area like around Dungannon, and that land was reserved for whoever held the lordship.
yeah.
The other septs had their own area, and you could say that individuals in that sept did own land or did come to own it. It changed quite a bit. It's
Yeah.
very dynamic and very flexible. Could they sell the land? Not theoretically, no, but sometimes they did, especially from the 16th century onwards. Like the last McCarthy Moore, he sold a lot of his land,
Hmm.
or better, mortgaged it. Like sort of when English currency was becoming more and more important, several lords would mortgage their land, and that happened a lot in the early 17th century as well. So land holding, it's something very flexible, something very tenuous. And if someone said the system was this and give you a nice tidy answer, that's wrong. There's no
Mm,
tidy answer. It's
yeah.
always complicated.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely does seem that way. Go on there, Michal.
No, I just want to say, just to add another layer to it, that why am I so zoomed in when you put me on
Yeah,
mute?
I was just thinking that. I don't know what the crack
I
is
don't
there,
even know
man.
why I'm so dark either. Anyway, no, someone was saying about Brehon law, and Owen had sort of touched on different aspects of like it depends, and it really you think about this as well. Though, if you're an O'Kennedy, you are ruled by the butlers. So
Mm,
you're operating primarily on a local level, probably under Brehon law.
mm,
You're following some English laws that the butlers are maybe expecting you to follow. So you're sort of straddling that line. But then you think to yourself as well that if there's a succession dispute, you may have people who curry up and ask the butlers to support their claim. And this happens all over Ireland with the Norman family or later family, where you curry up to your overlord, the butlers, to support your claim. So therefore, you could be applying an English primogeniture eldest son. You could be the eldest son and going to an English court, basically using the English system to promote your claim against the wishes of your clan, who have maybe used Tanistri or Brehon system to give the title to their preferred candidate. So this just really reflects the flexibility in which lords within the system would straddle both English and Irish laws to basically gain power. They would just use any system to hand. It wasn't about this need to keep this Irish system or this English system or this innate sort of, typical, like, we need to keep everything Irish. The families and individuals would use whatever systems were available to them, to whatever laws were available to gain the upper hand, and that could be English law or Irish law, and that so it really was. It, like Owen has basically said, it depends on the time, depends on the individual.
Yeah.
And it was never static at any stage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the nail on the head, like we're talking about the 13th century there, because I think the question fits in more with the 13th century, especially when he was using the term Norman and stuff. Because it's very funny during the 10th century, well, the 9th and 10th century, when you have people fighting for the law of St. Patrick and the law of St. Columba, where they're trying to, in one half, fight for centralization of the island. Law of St. Patrick specifically is used to centralize the monastic settlements. And then you have this law of St. Columba, which is there to keep to the old decentralized ways. But because monastic settlements and city settlements were pretty much one of the same at the time, just as we're transforming into the urban city settlements of the Vikings, this whole thing of fighting for centralization becomes key, especially between political fighting between the Clan Owen and Clan Coleman, where you have this feeling of, are they keeping to the old ways or modernizing? So you could definitely see that in the 9th and 10th century. But when it comes down to the 13th century, I think people are fighting more to survive than anything else. You have the Normans who came in here like a sledgehammer, have smashed up the old society of the O'Connors. And now everybody's just, are they exploiting the situation or literally fighting to survive at the time? So I don't think, when you're on that forum of trying to survive, I don't think you care about the old ways or the new ways, So I definitely would agree with you there, Michal, that it does depend on the era that you're talking about. Oh, and you seem like you want to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that go to any period in history and there's going to be tensions. There's going to be tension between people who want to centralize, if you can use that word, or who want more power. Those are in power, they want to pass it on to their descendants. And people who are not, who are less in power, and they don't want more central power. You always have that. You always have, like, Saint Malachy's bringing his reforms of the church, trying to impose, centralize the church in Ireland. Yes, the precise format of this tension, the precise format of these struggles change, and the entrance of the Normans changes things dramatically. Because and I think it took the Gaelic Irish quite a while to realize what was going on, because it took a couple of years before they said, hold on a second, this isn't just a new group of warlords. We suddenly have somehow become entangled with a new king who is quite a good, is powerful king. He's quite skilled that sort of way. And then jump forward a couple of hundred years, the English kingdom in Ireland is unraveling to a bit. and like Gaelic law will have changed somehow. It'll have been influenced by changes in Roman law, by legal developments in Europe, and
Mm.
interaction with Norman/English law.
For sure. Mihal, any surnames or anything you want to cover there? Or do you hate all those surnames or you just want to carry on talking about lands?
Yeah, yeah, I hate them all. No, I think let me just go back down here.
This is a good
Kevin,
one off. Yeah. Do you want to
Kevin
cover
was sort of
Kevin's one on the coil of Wicklow?
yeah. I mean, Coil's an interesting one because Coil can. So if you've got the surname Doyle, or Coil, they're almost interchangeable as well. Purely because in the old Gaelic and the old Irish, I can't remember the exact way it changed, but if you so like the O'Donnells were originally O'Connells written down in early Irish, and then it became O'Donnell later on. So the C and a D in Irish can be sort of interchangeable in the name. So you will find some Doyles with the Coyle surname and vice versa. But most Coils come from, I believe, McGillicoil or McIllahoyle. So service to a saint. I don't know which saint. I'm sorry. But if you've got Gilla or Whale in your name, it's normally a devotee or a follower or a servant of a saint. So they normally get those sort of you have that. So anything with kill in it is a link to a church like McKilbride. So yeah, you've got branches. There's branches all over Ireland. There's branches in primarily Coils found around Roscommon and Ulster, but I'm pretty sure there's branches in Leinster too, especially like I said with the Doyle link there as well. I think where was he saying that there's links to the O'Byrnes? Interestingly, if anyone who's done O'Byrne ancestry, in my own research, I find out that wherever you find Doyles, there's a branch of O'Byrnes. Even in the unattested smaller septs that aren't really recorded, like where I'm from, just outside Banbridge, Newry area, there's Doyles that have no, literature links in the annals, no great histories. And the same again with the O'Byrnes in that area, we're very closely related. So yeah, it could be that the Leinster branch has the same sort of link that I find there. But yeah, Monaghan, Roscommon, Tyrone, McGillahoyle, Coyle, McGillahone, Doyle, they're all sort of interchangeable. So you find it all over Ireland just because of how many variations it comes from.
Yeah, seems fair. What else do I need to blastering do? Any other questions or anything that you guys want to cover there?
Someone was asking about McHenry or McCall.
Yeah, McCall's you get McCall, McCullough, Cathmall. They're all sort of interchangeable again. It comes from multiple eponyms, so multiple origins. McCall with a CAL. It's also a Scottish branch of the family as well. So you find that main branches of McCalls tend to come from Tyrone. I believe they claim a Kennelowen sort of link to their line, but obviously you have the McCall with an A as well that sort of settled in the area during the plantations. So around Clogher, Tyrone. So finding out which branch you would descend from would be, I think genetics might help. But even then, there's plenty of pitfalls with genetic testing. But most McCalls come from McCullough, which is the original name. And they find Tyrone's the kind of heartland of that surname. Again, branches all over Ireland. McHenry is... in Scottish, in Scotland, I believe it's McHenry or Hendry or Henderson. It's sort of where you would get the you can have that variation come from Scotland. In Irish, it's originally McArmory,
Yeah.
um, um, and again, you get all these sort of variations of it. Again, it's found in Tyrone and Armagh are the main sort of areas, but it's also a Gaelicization of Fitzhenry. So
Mm.
you'll have Norman families who've Gaelicized their name, originally being Fitzhenry, and then they become Monkhenry. They, I believe, are found around Galway, and some secondary sources have claimed that they are part of the Burkes. Whether that's true or not, or whether it's just an attempt to attach themselves to a bigger king group or a more dominant king group in an area, it's hard to say. And then it's found in Armagh, Monaghan as well, which is they're said to be part of the older kingdom or king group of Archela. So yeah, you've got two branches in Ulster and one in Galway. Primarily are the bigger branches of the families, and then you've got the Scottish branches coming in too. So in Ulster.
Oh, Michal did his homework last night. Anyway, that's the main thing. He's spitting out a whole load of information. What we were talking about earlier about land is quite interesting as well, because I noticed when the old French first moved into the southeastern areas of Ireland, straight away they don't really fully bring in the county system, do they? It kind of blurs in. Maybe it's just the fact that the old French, the Normans as we call them today, although they're made up of Frisians and members of the Anjous and Brittany, when they go into the southeastern areas of Ireland, I don't really see them going in there and suddenly bringing in the county system all over the place. I only really see the county system coming into Ireland in the 16th century. It's kind of funny that when the old French go into these areas, they're kind of, having kind of a more of a mixed system rather than straight away, the English system that we know today. And I'm assuming as well in England, they are, slowly bringing in a county system, but it's not the county system we know of the 16th century.
Yeah, that's.
I'll let you go first.
Go ahead, Neil. Okay.
No, I'll let you
Because
first.
Go on, fighting shooter.
Yeah, because in a way, first of all, they've come into new land where there's already existing kingdoms, to sub kingdoms, etc.
Yeah.
That would move like Westminster, the Desmoulin,
Yeah.
basically the McCartys who were in originally around Castle, they get pushed out.
Oh, sorry about this, lads. Up the rebels! Oh, 100%. Thank you so much for that donation, lads. That means so much to myself. I'm assuming you're up down in the Cork region there. If you have any questions about Cork, definitely ask us there. I'm just seeing which one got the donation there. Oh yeah, that's Mihal. Mihal, that's a donation for you. Up the rebels.
Thank you very much. Which rebels? So many of them in Irish history.
And it's an O'Brien as well, so we'll have to talk about the O'Briens later for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Owen. Work away there.
Yeah, so you already had these existing things, and then there are grants given out, like various Fitzgerald, etc. The people who go, the Lacys, etc. They start being given grants, but before the counties as such, you have baronies, and baronies are still important. Like in South Kerry, where I am, most of Ivra is Ivra barony, but around Kenmare and then is Dunkerrin. So if you actually go and look, baronies, sometimes they're called half baronies, still exist.
Yeah.
And I think they're the first thing that begin to emerge on top of, you have a very complicated Gaelic system, starting with fields, Valley Betex, etc., depending where you go, and Tuas, etc., and then provinces. You have a whole pile of stuff. So there is an attempt to impose some sort of order on this, but that attempt takes a long, long time, and
Mm.
it changes because it's the same in England. You
Yeah.
have they know they use that word the seven kingdoms or whatever it was supposed to be of the Saxons before the Norse came in, and
Yeah.
the emergence of Wessex and things like that. Eventually, England. You
Mm.
have like this administrative these administrative areas take quite a while to emerge.
Mm.
One thing that I find very interesting is that the county identity is very, very strong in Ireland, much less so in England, because in England they always seem to be messing with their counties, and not
Yeah.
even with their counties, with their local administrative units. Because I think
Mm.
most, like here, the county is the administrative unit, not in England anymore, not for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
I
interesting
will
as
just.
well. Yeah, go on,
Uh,
Michal.
no, it's just straight away. This comes from Paul McCotter, Dr. Paul
Mm.
McCotter. He's done excellent work on pretty much this question, more of the Barney level.
Mm.
His book, Territorial. It's got territorial. I can't remember. It's quite a long title thing. Is a brilliant read if you want to know more about this subject. He basically tries to map the Tricket Cats, which is the Barney level. So, like Owen has said, there you have the townlands, and then you have the baronies, and then you have a county, and then you have the province. So
Mm.
he basically maps the Tricket Cats over the barony system, which is brought in by the Normans,
Mm.
and actually for the most part. The barony system kind of maps very well over the Tricket Cat system, which is like I said, the smaller um, uh, Irish system that's being used at the time. So I mean, with a few variations here and there, like Owen said, the borders were never static. Except for maybe where you find prominent features like rivers or mountains, mountain ranges. Then obviously they kind of fixed the border there.
Mm. Mm.
But yeah, the Normans came in. One of the things they do is they bring sheriffs in. They bring their obviously the courts. They break the land up into liberties and crosslands, and then but no county in Ireland was really formed. Like our counties weren't formed at one stage. If you look at Monaghan was created as it was just the lands the McMahons owned. And
Mm.
whenever they sided, I believe they sided with the English, or they were just given their land, and it just formed the modern day county of Monaghan.
Mm.
And Sir Henry Sidney, I believe, had some like part of creating the counties of Connacht. Um, the Who else? I'm trying to think who else was effectively. Sir John Perrott famously, obviously, shired Ulster.
Mm.
In 1584, 85, I can't
Mm.
remember, but around there. These counties are obviously all formed at different stages, and under different reasons. So the
Mm.
reason that they are formed like this is not just a clear cut England's coming in just to impose a specific thing. Like Owen has said, it's happening over time, gradually, as new things are developing, new events are happening, form these sort of um, uh, uh, shires and these lands, these counties, to sort of work with the politics of the day.
Why do we look like 70s serial killers?
Because I
We need better equipment. That's why. What was it called? Donate, donate. That's why you donate to the channel so we can get better cameras and sound and all that kind of stuff. I was messing around with the bloody phone. This is so funny. You go off and you spend an absolute fortune on mics and what was it called, and cameras and the whole shebang. And what was it called? I was trying out the phone the other day, and the phone came out bloody better, than the this bloody camera and the headset. So it's like, Jesus Christ, why'd you even spend any money when the camera comes out better? Do you know? So what I'm thinking about doing now, actually, lads, is instead of going off and spending bloody money on a fortune for a shitty camera and a shitty bloody mic set that comes out crap anyway, is what I'll do is I'll get a stand and I'll get what was it called, connection thing, and I'll connect up the phone to the laptop, and I'll just use the phone because the phone, I when I was doing the live stream with the phone, the sound was better, and the what was it called, the camera was much better, so I might do that next time, is connect that up, and what was it called, and do a few other bits and bobs in the background and stuff, because Rachel has it all linked up with her phone as well, and she's getting way better views. She's, what was it, 40,000 people were watching her yesterday on live stream, so I might do that next time, so we don't look like serial killers anymore.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like, I blame the ex-wife. She watched a lot of those serial killer programs
Here,
on
it looks
Netflix.
worse without the background. You're there like, oh, you need to take down the Christmas tree and stuff. It looks way worse in the background there without it. What were you saying there, Michal?
No, I'm just saying I blame, I've been subjected to Netflix documentaries after Netflix documentaries of 70s and 80s serial killers, and maybe it's just
Oh, well, there you go.
I've adopted the fashion sense without realizing it. So it's just that I think I seen a name earlier. McGonagall. Was it
Yeah.
McGonagall? I don't want to make sure. Can you find it? I don't want to
I
make
don't know,
sure.
1 second.
See it
I'm
here.
not seeing that one. Was it up a bit, was it?
No, it's down near the bottom. I think it was McGonagall. I'm going to talk about McGonagall. And if
Yeah,
it's not McGonagall,
just don't care. You're going to push it around anyway.
Yeah, McGonagall's got two sort of known branches. The first one are part of Tyrconnell, and they're found. So that's, you're looking at the Donegal region of the and they are an ecclesiastical families. They are earners, but I don't know the church off the top of my head from which they are. So anyone that's not aware, if I have to say this throughout the evening, earners are hereditary landholding families within the church. They are effectively, they're part of the early church. They have a say in the church, but they don't take their they have a tonsure, they have their hair shaved, they are involved in the local politics of the church and a saying, and they even provide a lot of the habits for the church, but mostly they don't take their what is it, where you adopt the laws of the church, and I can't remember what it's
Are you
called.
talking about canon law, is it?
No, where you become a priest, you take on the you have to start abiding by the rules of the church. Anyway, they don't take that. So they even later on, they're still able to marry, they're still able to do a lot of these things that you can't do as a priest in the church. Anyway, so they're landholding families in the church. So McGonagalls are one of those in Tyrconnell. Another branch is from Scotland. Now, the problem is with this Scottish branch is they actually move into a lot of Donegal was given to Scottish planters during the plantation, so you get a lot of overlap, especially in areas like Derry today and stuff like that. So, again, it's DNA is going to be the main thing that sort of separates whether you're spelling is never. So a lot of people would say, oh, if I'm a muck or a mac, I must be Irish or Scottish because of the spelling. Spelling is not a clear cut. Spelling, religion of your ancestors is not a clear cut decider of where your family originates from, because names aren't standardized till the 19th century, and people change religion all the time. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah. I thought Kevin brought up a really interesting one as well. Any famous extinct surnames? Apparently, the Fitzdermonds went extinct. I always find that one very, very interesting as well. It's kind of out of my field of expertise because a lot of the families that are getting wiped out happens during the 19th century, especially going into the Irish Rebellion of 1798 and the Irish Rebellion of 1803. And then after that, to have the great I don't even know what we're calling it at this stage, where the British go in and they just take all of the food. And when the blight goes in and hits the potatoes, which is pretty much the only thing we have left at that point, you just have a clear wipeout of a large amount of the population. What's also very interesting about that is the ones that do escape and make their way over to Canada and America have certain surnames that do not survive in Ireland at that point. And today you see them popping up in America and Canada. And I remember there was a girl I knew called McCuffrey, and she couldn't find a single other McCuffrey inside of Ireland itself, but could find McCuffreys over in what was it called, America. So I do find that very interesting how the majority of them that are wiped out happens during the 19th century because of the fighting with the British. And on top of that as well, I think there's a few of them that when the old French come in, they have to change the spelling in their name. Like, for example, Gillypatrick, don't they end up becoming the Fitzpatricks and stuff? I don't know if there's a branch of
Yeah.
Gillypatrick that survives after that. I think they all just convert over and become Fitzpatricks, if I'm not mistaken, Mihal.
Yes, so this is obviously a good question, but it's oversimplifies the question because what is an extinct surname? Because technically every Irish surname became extinct because we no longer
Yeah.
spelt them in the Irish format, or they were absorbed into another name, so we have surnames are absorbed, like the O'Hamilton, who became Hamilton. You don't get
Yeah.
O'Hamilton. A lot of names, basically by the 19th century, you don't have any Irish surnames. We've mostly dropped the O's, we've mostly dropped the mucks. And it was only in the 19th century that during this sort of like nationalistic wave that swept through Europe, and a lot of countries tried to sort of re-grab these links to their ancient heritages and whatnot, that we started to apply O and mucks to our names. We started to regalicize our names, often incorrectly. But so you would have, the MacAnvard family, who were the Wards, maybe families trying to go back to the original spelling of it. So a lot of names are lost through Anglicization. Again, through that process, you have families that are different. So when any of my videos, if you're sort of saying, they go like, Lynch. So Lynch is made up of two eponyms. You've got the O'Loinzig and the O'Loinzicon. So that's two different names that both became Lynch. So you've lost those two original names. And that doesn't happen just in one place. The McCarthys are the same. There's sort of like 5 variations of unrelated branches of McCarthy that come from 2 to 3 eponyms. The same with Murphy. From about 3 eponyms. So you've lost 3 names and gained 1. So again, like I say, it's kind of hard to pin it down to like, and another, he does sort of say as well, like, okay, well, the Fitzgeralds are genetically gone. They no longer exist that we can find in a genetic sense. That one would be a bit harder to do. Theoretically, I know people who study surnames had said that on average, you lose, I think it's every year you lose a certain percentage of surnames globally. And we're sort of heading towards, in next sort of 200-300 years, China will have like basically one surname, Lee, and Korea will have Kim, and Japan, I know there's a couple in Japan that so England, Smith. So you can see that the demographic push as we sort of lose more and more surnames all the time. So I wouldn't know off the top of my head all the surnames are extinct, because primarily I don't research, and I don't get asked to research a name. Of someone going, oh look, I'm a Smith, can you research a name? Because technically they don't exist if they're extinct and no one's asked me to research them. But I do know the McDermotts of Roscommon. And there are, like I say, a few others, but it just depends on what parameters you are putting that extinction in. Because theoretically, 99% of our surnames are extinct because we don't use them anymore, or we've regained them. They're not actually in the correct place.
Perfect. A good few questions coming in from TikTok as well. I'll let you zoom around there for those surnames on TikTok, Mihal, in your own time. A very good one there, pointing out the same problem that we're having is that, and Mihal has even noticed that himself, is that when I click on Mihal, right? So to get better views, we have to zoom in and out, right? Which makes sense, right? But the problem is when we zoom into poor Mihal there, his head suddenly balloons out and he looks like a serial killer. So both on TikTok and on Facebook this morning, everybody's complaining about and Mihal's taking the blunt of it. Poor Mihal's face looking like a serial killer this morning. But what we'll do is we'll experiment. What I found, right, and this is so strange, and I said it before to the lads, and what was it called? Jim O'Neill pointed it out, this morning as well. I did a live stream. What was it? And I did it on the phone. It came out a million times better. What was it called? Using the this camera here and using the microphone and stuff. And I spent a fortune on stuff. And over the years as well, I've gone off, bought my cameras, and they come out shite compared to the phone. I used the phone over the weekend. Oh, million times better than this bloody garbage around here. I don't know why I spend money on any of it, to be honest with you. Absolutely annoys the hell out of me. So, yeah, myself and Mihal and what was it called? O'Neill will experiment over the weekend and stuff, and we'll see what comes out the best. What I'll do is I'll just connect the bloody phone up. I think they're far better than this googly gaggly shite. All this modern stuff. I think it's a load of crap, to be honest with you. But anyway, I'll head back over to Mihal there. Is there any family in particular you want to have a swing off there? Or are you sick of them all?
Yeah, I think... no, Ashley was asking about the O'Reillys. Do I have a short video on the O'Reillys? I think I do. But basically, O'Reilly really...
just 1 second there. We have to push you to the side. What was it called? One question there off the O'Briens. Can you explain... I don't know, how do you pronounce this one here? And would you consider yourself such? 1 second there. I thought that was a surname there.
No, it's not a surname. It's what would you call it? I need to scroll up and get it. Let me
the traditional story Irish tellers from the 19th century. Doesn't that just pop up in the 19th century? Though? I don't know. Yeah,
Birdie obviously is, and Kevin Flanagan have sort of used this title before. Do I consider myself? Is that for me?
Yeah, that's you. That's your donation. That's why I was like, on here, like that's what I thought it was a surname. I was like, "Is our surname?" I quickly Googled it there, and it was storyteller from the 19th century. I was like, "Oh yeah."
No, I mean, well, they kept it. Well, I believe that the traditional narrative is not just like a storyteller, but they preserve history. They sort of keep genealogies. That there's sort of it does have an older, although it's sort of it's like Shawnackie or Shawnackie. Like I said, I've more heard Birdie sort of reference it. Birdie Brosnan and Kevin O'Flanagan. I've sort of more seen them sort of attest to it. I don't know of its reference in medieval Ireland, because I'm not aware of any family sort of using that title. But yeah, folk storytelling. It seems to be an all-encompassing word from what I remember. It sort of just has a bit of everything, do I consider myself anything like that? No, not really. I purely because my Irish is atrocious, so I don't think I don't think I keep Irish custom or tradition alive enough to warrant a title like that. What I do is try and point people in the right direction to sort of find that themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you can find an old title that sort of says a guide,
Yeah.
or but I don't I don't consider myself pure enough in Irish culture and language and tradition to take on a title like that.
Mm-hmm.
Shawnee, there you go, Shawnee. Um, I knew it was something close to that.
Yeah. We'll get back to the meat then of what we're actually good at, because you're more on the genealogist side of things, and I'm more on the Irish medieval history side of things, especially politically and warfare wise, is kind of more of our field of expertise, to be honest with you. I just let Michal there swim around. I was like, Michal, don't drown there, will ya?
No, I mean, like I say, I'm interested in, I suppose, like I say, if I'm reading a history, but if Philip and I, we sort of share the same sources. If I'm reading the history book, I'm looking for the names. I'm looking for the families who are involved in the politics of the time. So I'm looking at, all I'm looking for is names all the time. I don't care about so much about a lot of the history unless it involves a family. This family started this battle for this reason. Fine, I'm interested in that, and that specific line. Whereas, but I don't care what's happening in the wider kingdom. I don't care. I just, Doyle did this for this against Butler. That's what I read. But Philip would more look at the, well, why did they do that? What is happening around them to make them do that? What do they look like when they're doing that? He's really into the, all the sort of the layers that go into that. I'm more A to B.
Yeah.
Doyle kills Butler because he thinks Butler's got a fat head. Rua, if you're watching, I'm sorry. But sort of, and that's why I need Philip because Philip will explain a wee bit more, and he'll tell you what's happening in Europe, and he'll tell you, obviously, naturally, I end up learning all this sort of stuff as well because sometimes you need to dig a little deeper, but. But I'm more interested in, why are king groups moving? Why are they migrating? Where do these king groups come from? Who is the ancestor of the Fiacre? Who is the ancestor of the Emil? Is he the ancestor? The Milesian myth, stuff like that. So genealogies, love them. But I can't tell you who your grandfather was. I'm sorry. I'm not. If it's beyond the 17th century, I'm not really interested. That's modern history to me.
That's it. And on top of that, we'll just pop back over to the O'Reillys there.
Yeah, sorry.
And I'll zoom you straight back in to annoy that fella there who doesn't like your serial killer head.
So the O'Reillys are, most O'Reillys come from one location, but I'll just reel off the two small things first. Riley is an English surname too, but it's not really heavily attested in Ireland from the English branches. And then you have the O'Rahillys from Cork. Now, they don't actually appear till the 17th, 16th, 17th century. So we have nothing on them beforehand, before the famous historian turns up in the 16th century. Most O'Reillys come from the O'Reillys of Breffna, the Kingdom of Breffna, which makes up modern day Cavan. And why am I forgetting the other county of? Well, it basically makes up Cavan, parts of Fermanagh, a little bit of Monaghan at times. So they're related to the O'Rourke's, paternally related. They're from the same group as the O'Rourke's. And they owned East Breffna. So the kingdom, sometimes they would rule the whole kingdom, and sometimes they would just rule the East, depending on which if the O'Rourke's were more powerful. They claim descent from a group called the Ebrian Breffna, who are the Ibrian, are the king group that the O'Connors, who were High Kings of Ireland, come from. That's a fabrication. It's not true. They edited that into their genealogies to become more prevalent. We actually don't know who the O'Rourkes and O'Reillys descend from. There's a couple of groups that they could descend from, but we're not it's not attested yet. No one's pinned it right down. So we're not really sure who their early king group is.
Jesus Christ. That's wild.
But yeah,
given that they're so important, like for the Breffni, like between the Enel Confederation and Connacht, so like they're the buffer between two massive factions. You think you'd know who their what was it called, foundations were? Do you know?
They
So
just
that's
edited
wild.
their genealogy so good,
Yeah.
and also because technically they appear sort of late in terms of that they appear. When they do appear when families are starting to appear on record, the first thing they do is claim to be part of the Ibreen. And also, but if you actually look where they are stationed, they are at the crossroads of the Enil to the north, the Efiacra to the west. They've got the Ibreen to the south and west. They've got, they're completely surrounded by all these major king groups in the area. That it really is hard to distinguish where they're from. We think they pushed in from Leitrim, so they're probably from a king group around Leitrim. Most migration points point to the O'Rourkes, who are the head of the family, the senior group, pushing in from Leitrim. So more likely they're from a Leitrim king group.
Yeah. 1 second, I'm full of burps right now, but 1 second, let me clear my throat. But it is, what was it called? Ashling asking about the O'Reillys as well, saying that she was told that her family were warriors, a lot more than just warriors, to be honest with you. Like the O'Reillys are very, very important. They're literally a buffer. Not just during the early medieval period between the Enel Confederation and Connacht, but later on again between the O'Neills and the Burghs. When the Burghs take over the administration around the Connacht area and stuff, they continue to become that major buffer. So they're one of the major important king groups, clans in that region. So I would say the O'Reillys are definitely very, very important group for sure. Dr. Owen O'Neill, what was it called? Do you have anything else to add into that conversation of why Breffni is so important, why the O'Reillys are so important? And do you have any idea about the foundations of the O'Reillys?
I'm not sure the foundations, but Breffni was a march area. It is like below it is the Pale, the English part of Ireland, the English kingdom, and above it is Ulster. So it's a border region heading into Ulster. So for that reason, it's very, very important. March areas are always important because these areas of transition. So that you have, like, I think that the O'Reillys, I could be wrong, but I think they developed markets, and then I think Cavan could have been developed by them quite early. So they were this sort of they had contact with English, Old English, whatever, but they also remain Gaelic. So that's why they were important.
Any surname there or anything you want to grab there, Michal?
Yeah, someone was saying that Coughlin appears to have been. Hang on, what's he saying? Coughlin appears to have been one of the most numerous Irish surnames. Again, it's one of those names that, just due to multiple eponyms, they come together and sort of form the name Coughlin, the anglicization of Coughlin. So you have, I think, the McCoughlins are more associated with Offaly. And the O'Coughlins are where are they from? Cork, the Cork area. are primarily where you would find Carberry areas where the O'Coughlins. But like I said, that you get these. The thing is, not every that this is something that kind of breaks a lot of people's hearts whenever they ask me about a surname. When they look at a map and they're like, "Oh, someone actually just said there about the Doyles of Sligo," and any information about them. But these families aren't attested. Then they're just minor families. They don't appear in great genealogy tracks. The Doyles generally don't anyway. They're just individual small groups of families that adopted a surname for multiple reasons as well. Some of them, like the O'Byrnes of Newry, try to create these links to wider the O'Byrnes of Wicklow, claiming that they were soldiers with Hugh O'Neill. They went north and then they just settled there. And they have no link to the O'Byrnes of Wicklow at all. They're not related. They're just a family that adopted a similar surname, had an ancestor called Byrne, became O'Byrnes, but he was famous to the family because they took the eponym, or he was famous at a time in the local area, or they've changed their name for another reason. There's a million reasons why you could. But then on the flip side, that doesn't mean every family who's a small group, scattered from their original homeland, isn't related to it. The O'Rourke's very famously have a very small branch in Cork. They're a kingdom from Breffna on the Ulster borders, Marchers, but there's a small group of O'Rourke's who are descended from in Cork, who famously, well, very not famous if you don't know the records, but they became hereditary beekeepers, which is it's quite a prominent title for the McCarthys, because we don't know why, but more likely they challenged, probably from a small branch that challenged for the title of kingship, lost. So the losing prince gathered his retinue and headed south for support from protection from the McCarthys.
Interesting. All right. I noticed a good few families were highlighting early on, and a few more comments popping up as well, talking about their connection between. Sorry, Owen. Is there anything else you want to add on
I
there?
just wanted to say, Caveman makes a good point about Irish naming practices. He says Irish naming practices are still around in the Gaeltacht regions and in many regions, I would say, as well as Gaeltacht. Examples like Patmore O'Connor, and then his son Pat Og. You could be named Rua if you're ginger, or Dove if black-haired. This is a good point, because it's something you still find in Ireland. But if you actually look over Irish history, sort of like if you look at a big lordship like the O'Neills, one of the branches of the O'Neills, they would, any Irish family group, clan, sept, whatever, they would split over time. So the Clandy Boys O'Neills is Clan Aid Bui, which is yellow-haired Hugh. So it's a naming practice of first names, but it's also something you find in clan and family group names. And take any group, any clan, and it's going to split. Like in the 1590s, the sons of Shane O'Neill were known as the MacShanes. If the whole Gaelic system hadn't been destroyed, there would be a clan in Tyrone somewhere called the MacShanes, who are O'Neills, but they call themselves MacShanes. And like you like O'Cahan are supposed, they came from Kenalowan. So the amount of, in the north of Ireland, the amount of families that are Kenalowan, Kenalconnell, in Munster, the amount of families who came from Cashel, from the McCarthys, is huge. And it's this naming practice that Caveman is pointing to is very, very important.
A lot of people demanding to cover the McGraths. What was it called? Because I know the McGraths originally come over from Scotland, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it? They move over during the 16th, 17th century.
Have you
Sorry,
got the
there. Yeah.
spelling of it? Like
We're looking at the what
like
was it? McGrath spelling of McGrath.
McGrath.
Yeah.
McGrath, sorry, that's it. McGrath. No, so McGrath again, it's a name that has multiple sort of origin points. It's not just one family coming across with a plantation. It's not, that they're another family that are, so. You can find it in early sources in Irish sources as well, spelled MEIC and then RAITH. So, you know, I can't remember the eponym of McGrath, but yeah, it's another family that's found heavily in Ulster. And both branches could be of. I'm pretty sure the McGraths of uh, um, Ireland, because you get McGratha, McGrath, are from Clare, County Clare. So they are a Dalcash family. So you obviously not typically found within the. You wouldn't have to worry about them if you're a Clare family being maybe potentially a planter family or Scottish family, but there are a Ulster branch as well, who are from the Donegal sort of Fermanagh area of Ireland. So you have to, if you're from that area, you could possibly be either Scottish or Irish. Again, they are another classical family. I can't remember if they're Earners or Corbs though, but they are associated with the church in Fermanagh, but I can't remember where. I'm sorry, the locations and stuff like that I need to actually research at the time. I can't remember every townland or church or but I would say if you are a McGrath, look at Fermanagh and look at churches. I'm near sure they were Earners or Corbs of a church. Quite a lot of them, most families that I find are around Lough Derg, so probably check around that area.
There's a famous, in the 1590s, there's a famous Archbishop Miller McGrath. He was from Donegal, Fermanagh area. He was a Franciscan, then I think he became a Catholic bishop, and then he became infamous by becoming Protestant. Like he was quite important in the 1590s, and although he wasn't from there, somewhere around there is Termon McGrath. I think, as far as I know, Termon is a word for church lands, and that's in Pettigo, which I think is in Donegal. So that he's one of the most famous McGrath, famous or infamous McGrath. McGrath. I was just checking, like his Irish name is Muira, and he became known as Miller McGrath.
Ah, nice. Very interesting for sure.
About the Lynches, links to Vikings or Norse settlers. I will say that there's no reference to that academically, as in like there's no literal. It's never been written down that there's a Norse branch of the family in any of the primary sources. Lynch has the branches that are recorded are the O'Loinsig in Antrim and Down, who are part of the Dal Naraja. The Lynches of the Kinaloan in Inishowen and Faha, in Donegal. So they're part of the Kinaloan. The Lynches of Meath and Galway, who are De Lynch, who are Norman families, and the Lynches of Galway and Clare. They're all either Norman or Irish branches. None of them are written down as being Scandinavian at any point. That doesn't mean, though, that there isn't a Scandinavian branch. Again, reiterate the point: not all branches are wrote about in and given grand genealogies. There may be a family of paternal Norse descent who has a Norse haplogroup who have adopted the surname Lynch, but there anyone that's writing about them, if you read anything, these are secondary sources at best. There's no, they don't appear in any of the old Irish genealogies there's ever been given that. The same way the McCotters would be given a proven Norse ancestry, or one branch would be given a proven Norse ancestry from Cotter of Dublin. So yeah, that's the, just put that out there for the link.
Right, just yeah, I was just
Someone's
looking
asking
at
about
that.
the Quins. Someone was asking about the Quins.
Oh no!
Do you want to cover that one, Owen? Do you want to cover the Quins?
Well, the Quinn, I'll tell you right now, the Quinn is literally found everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, he says the Quins of Donegal, West Tyrone, and I know the O'Quins were one of the minor groups around the O'Neills.
Yeah. They're the Quins are a Kenlow. There's a Quinn Kenlowen branch. There's a Quinn Ivina branch. There's a Quinn. Literally, I would say Quinn is one of those names that has all the provinces of Ireland have Quinn. There's a Dalcash Quins as well. So you're looking around the links of the O'Briens, stuff like that. There's several unrelated families, like say Kenlowen, that all attached to the bigger king groups. So I'm sure if you did your DNA test, you're probably looking around the related to likes of the O'Kellys, related to the O'Briens, related to wider Kenlowen branches like the O'Hagans or the O'Neills. I'm trying to think of more O'Quins that stick out in my brain. I want to say, is there any of Annalee, of the O'Farrells? Can't remember.
I'll leave you think about that one there, because there's actually a question that's bang on Owen O'Neill's field of expertise during the 9 Years' War. Hey, do you know anything about the O'Hogans? And the reason why I'm targeting O'Hagan, sorry. And the reason why I'm targeting Owen is because of the next part. I was always told we were doing the dirty work for the O'Neills during the time of Hugh O'Neill, the 9 Years' War. Whatever that means, could be balls. Could you elaborate on that one?
No, there were several O'Hagans who were very close to O'Neill. If you go through the state papers, you will find plenty of O'Hagans, for example, who are captains of his companies. And there's 2 or 3 who were even higher. I know that traditionally the O'Hagan, I think the O'Hagans were responsible for Tullahogue, where the O'Neills were traditionally inaugurated, and it was an O'Hagan who was supposed to either hand over the rod of lordship or a slipper. I think there was a Henry O'Hagan in the 9 Years' War who was very close to O'Neill, and who actually, several O'Hagans went with him at the time of the flight of the Earls. But like you, if you look through the state papers, you find O'Hagans everywhere. And one thing that's funny is, traditionally, the O'Donnellys were supposed to be the marshals of the O'Neills of Tyrone or of Dungannon, and then the O'Hagans had other roles. But the O'Donnellys were very close to Shane O'Neill. I think they fostered Shane O'Neill and some of his sons, so they didn't get on too well. They weren't important under Hugh O'Neill, just showing you how these things would change. Whereas the O'Hagans were very close to Hugh O'Neill.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that if you jump forward to the 1640s, you're going to find a lot of O'Hagans in the forces of Owen Roe O'Neill.
There's a poor woman. I don't want to target. I want to target actually Mihal there because there's a poor woman over in your TikTok there who's been asking for the last hour about the McCavill. I have the spelling here, and I'll just chuck it into chat. She's been asking for the last a good while there, so I'll hand that one over to poor Mihal, who's trying to relax because we've been getting the whip out for the last hour and just whipping
Well,
him
I'm
for
more
various
worried.
surnames.
I'm more worried about my voice going. I probably could do with a cup of tea or something just to loosen the voice box. I feel like
What we'll do now is we'll give you this
No,
one. I'll give you
yeah,
this one because that poor woman now has been waiting for ages for you to cover
no,
that one,
no,
patiently waiting. So I'll give you this one, and then I'll leave you have a break for an hour and a half or something,
yeah,
and I'll have Dr. O'Neill take over
yeah.
just the whole live stream.
Yeah, McConville is again. It's found in a load of places. It comes from I don't remember the later like the Irish translation, but it's one of those ones that's got a funny sort of not funny. It's got like a really good eponym to it. Like it's like the Wolf Warrior or something like that. So yeah, but I mean from what I remember of the McConvilles, they found primarily South Down and Armagh, part of the Archaelic Kingdom. Then where else do they find? I think that's the only. But Comwell it's also a variation of Comwell as well. So I think Comwell's an English name, so it can be Gaelicized from that. But the only branch that is coming to my mind, and it's the only place I can sort of associate the name, is primarily in South Down and Armagh, part of the Kingdom Confederation of Archela. Now, this Archela isn't the same as a lot of other groupings in Ireland. It's more of a confederation. If anyone knows Scottish history, think of like Clan Chattan or Clan Cattan, where they're not all from the same ancestor, like the Neil would claim to be descendants of Niall and Nine Hostages. The Archelian Kingdom primarily associates itself with the Three Colours mythology. So again, this is simplified history that the later monks and writers have done to sort of simplify genealogy into a neat sort of biblical sort of, descendant from Adam kind of straight lines. But as anyone knows who's done any family tree history, it's never that simple. So, but your McConvilles would probably be related to, or you would have a lot of close sort of genetic markers with like the likes of the McMahons of Ulster and stuff. So that's sort of where you're looking. You're looking South Down, Armagh, Louth sort of area of Ireland.
Fascinating. All right. And I'll give you a bit of breathing space there. I know there's
I know
other
it's
people.
my voice.
Yeah. We'll give your voice a bit of a break. I know lots of other people there are waiting for more of their surnames to be covered and stuff. Owen, you look like you want to jump on there.
Yep.
Is there any name or anything you want to cover?
Caveman is raising some interesting stuff, especially about the name Cucconnacht. Cu, see fada in Irish is hound, dog. But like Connacht Maguire was used a lot by Maguires, and in fact, if you go and look, you'll find sometimes it's every 2 or 3 generations. Sort of Hugh Maguire, the famous one who was killed in 1600, his father was Cucconnacht, and his younger brother was Cucconnacht. But perhaps the most famous Cucconnacht was the younger brother of Hugh Maguire, because it was he who organized the Flight of the Earls. He went to the continent, and he got the ship and brought back the ship that O'Neill and O'Donnell fled on. So he played an interesting role in that. And then he unfortunately died within a year because one of the saddest things about the flight of the Earls. It's many sad things, but when they end up in Italy, all the young guys, the young lords, they die very quickly from malaria and stuff like that, and like Cuconut and um, Rory O'Donnell die very very quickly, whereas Hugh O'Neill
Mm.
survives for another 12 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
So
fascinating stuff, all right. Like,
yeah,
and something I want to bloody correct on this one here is the blasted hurling one. 1 second, somebody said that the Normans had brought hurling into Ireland, and that's a load of crap because you can see that in the Finn cycle. How you have the Fenians, the cattle raiders of Ireland, during the early medieval period, from the I'd say, well, it's definitely documented by the time we get into the ninth century because the Finn cycle is from the ninth century. But it's definitely pushing back at least to the 7th century, way before the coming of the Normans onto the
you
island of
find
Ireland
it.
where people are playing
You
hurling.
find you find stories of hurling in Cuchulainn as well.
Yeah.
Like so, like I'm sure he had loads of hurling matches in which he ended up killing loads of people because everything he did, he killed people.
Yeah.
Um, and then there are um, what I was going to say. I'm fairly sure that there is a gravestone. I don't know if it's in Scotland or in Ulster, which has
Mm.
a Hurley on it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I've
sort
seen
of.
that as well.
Yeah, I can't remember offhand, but like, there's as far as I know, there's no record whatsoever
Mm.
of the Normans playing Hurley.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. I've never come across the hurling. What was it called? The Normans playing hurling. Well, the old
Yeah,
French playing hurling until 1366, where we have what was it? Lionel of Antwerp having his little fit in his documentation about the Normans mixing in with the wild Irish and stuff. So it's not until 1366 that I can see documentation of the old French playing
yeah.
hurling.
It could be that the word Hurley comes from French. I do
Yeah,
because the it's completely different in Irish. I think it's
yeah, yeah,
Imoniac, isn't it?
yeah.
Being in Kerry, we never talk about hurling. They don't do it down here. It's just football. Um,
Oh, nasty stuff
um,
there.
apart from the very north of Kerry, but like it's an Irish sport, and
Mm,
like it always has been. No one,
yeah,
okay, they play a bit in Scotland,
mm,
but yeah,
yeah. The only closest one that I could see that was brought in by the old French, maybe, and Owen, you're definitely up to correcting me on this one, is probably forms of Irish dancing. That could have been introduced with the old French into
yeah,
Ireland. But I can't see hurling, especially hurling, because of the fact that not only can we see influences in Ireland going back to the Finn cycle and stuff, but also on top of that as well, during the Viking Age, I'm pretty sure it's the other way around because of the fact that it's not until we have the Gaul Gael, the Hiberno Scandinavian influences that are going over from Ireland up to Iceland that we start to see a form of hurling start to emerge in Iceland as well. And it's only played within, well, I wouldn't, well, it probably goes out throughout the all of Iceland really. But it's mostly stories connected to the Gaul Gael. That we can see this kind of similar game. It's basically a stick game, a hurley stick game that appears up around Icelandic area. That's very similar to hurling. I cannot remember what
yeah,
the name of it is now in on my head. I remember it was in that Viking movie that was out recently where they were playing that game, and I seen it. I was like, Jesus, that looks exactly like hurling. Did a bit of research into it, and it ends up it's stories like Nal Saga, for example, stories like that are connected to this game of hurling that appears in Iceland and then is connected to the wider Scandinavian world. So it definitely seems that it first appears within the likes of the Finn cycle. That gives us an indication that the Irish are definitely playing hurling first, and then it emerged into Iceland and the wider Scandinavian world. But I don't see any documentation of the old French playing hurling until 1366. So even on top of that, I would definitely disagree of the Normans
Yeah,
bringing hurling over with them. For sure, because I even in France, I don't know any clues or indication of the French or English playing hurling throughout the entirety of the medieval period.
yeah. That, to be honest, it's the first time in my life that I've seen someone questioning the Irish origins of hurling.
Don't get
And
me wrong, you should question everything, like, but yeah, I just think
yeah,
that one's
yeah, but like,
definitely
but
out there, like,
I'm going to look it up afterwards. But I'm fair
yeah,
that it was there, and like the GAA was founded around 1888 or something, I think. But like
yeah,
they were codifying something that already existed.
yeah,
Um, the question I find most interesting is like Gaelic football is everywhere, but
mm,
hurling is only in basically half of the country.
yeah.
And at a
Oh,
senior
that's
level,
interesting stuff.
why?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like why? And then even in Cork, if you go into Cork, I think Dennis has gone because he knows all these details. If you go into Cork,
Mm,
hurling is really strong in some places. I think in East
yeah,
Cork,
mm,
and that song Killa has now
yeah,
that it like it's about 3 years old. It's a new classic, and it's
mm,
East Cork. It's a big hurling place. Other places, no. Limerick is Limerick,
mm.
Tipperary, Kilkenny are huge in hurling, but like Donegal, I don't not even sure if they do hurling up there.
Yeah.
It's a funny question. It's a funny question.
I
Hello.
think,
Bye.
Um,
yeah, I
the
think this one's
question,
an interesting there. We're just
someone's
gonna,
asking the question is there because the strongest hurling counties are the Norman counties.
I
Uh,
wanted to. Can I just?
Limerick County, okay, you County Limerick, yes. Clare, no. I'm trying to think who else is big at hurling.
mm,
Antrim, I know Antrim and Down is. I'm not sure about Tyrone.
yeah,
I think I'm going to have to check that. I think I'm going to
yeah,
have to
yeah.
check. And
Ba, ba,
like
ba, ba, ba.
Kilkenny, Limerick, Cork are
Mm.
okay. I'm at risk of causing a new civil war by saying this. I think they are.
Well, Cork is the greatest hurling team on the what was it, the island of Ireland. That's always been the
Yeah,
case, and that's always been fact. But I
I'm
would say
neither
that's more of,
agreeing.
what's that?
I'm neither agreeing or disagreeing.
Well, it's just a
But
fact, to be honest. Go on.
okay, I think Fanula has just typed in Kilkenny, and Stephen has just said check the hurling stats. Claire question mark. But like Cork was very mixed. You had lots of Irish there and lots
Mm,
of and some Norman things. Clare Clare is basically O'Brien's.
yeah.
Kilkenny again, it's mixed.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, Cork is very much dominated by the McCarthy. It's always the McCarthy families and stuff that pretty much dominate that side
yeah,
of things. I'm going to continue to ignore Mihal because Mihal's been there in the background going, I have something to say. I have something to say. And I'm like, Mihal, I thought your voice has gone to hell. You're suddenly
Yeah,
back
but
with
we're not going to
enthusiasm
drink.
when it's a game of hurling going on. What's going on here? What do
Well,
you have to add in?
actually, no, I'll say like hurling is definitely the best sport. Like,
Yeah.
I can only really speak for Ulster, but Antrim is definitely the biggest county
Mm,
for in Ulster, and Tyrone is more Gaelic football rather than hurling. You get some. There's quite a few clubs my wee boys play for. Clubs up my way in North Down as well. So, um, it's popular. But I will just say, I heard something mentioned. Like I couldn't answer because I was in the kitchen, but I could hear it. I don't know if you answered. Did you reply to the answer on the? You were saying about the grave slab in
no, I
Donegal.
think Owen was talking slightly about it. I
yeah, but I
want you
couldn't
to
remember
expand
where
on
it
that one, though.
was. There
Yeah,
is a
so
great slab at a Hurley.
yeah, I know this because it's my symbol for clans and dynasties. It's the gravestone of Magnus Magorston, who is a 14th century Gaul Gael. and the gravestone was carved. It says on the gravestone, carved by Fergus MacAllan.
Mm.
So it's a 40. So they believe he has more ties with the Isle of Man in Scotland. He's definitely a Gaul Gael. Like I says, 14th century. So, but yeah, it's Hurley is. They believe it's just a multiple mini sort of backwards and forwards from Scotland and Ireland, and obviously amongst the the Norse world as well. It's a stick and a ball game isn't synonymous with just Ireland and Scotland and the
Yeah.
Isles. The stick and ball games all over Europe that are very similar in their early history. So there will have been a lot of backwards and forwards with that.
It's funny how it does pick up though. With the Gaul Gael, how the Gaul Gael, the Scandinavians that settled into Ireland and married local Irish women, how they picked up hurling so quick is very interesting in itself. It's definitely some more work people should definitely go into. There's this other family as well over in your TikTok. That woman's been waiting patiently. Durkin. Do you know anything about Durkin, lads? I'll put in the spelling there for you guys because she's been asking there for a good bit on the Durkins. To be honest with you, I haven't heard too much about the Durkins. Do you know anything about them, Owen, or anything?
Just a few politicians from Kildare and a poet, wasn't?
Yeah.
I must say it's not ringing any bell. Normally, what I say to people, if I don't know it or at least like a variation of it, then it's probably come across from either England. I know a lot of Scottish surnames, but they're Highland surnames, so they, if they're not from the Highlands, I'm trying to think, like maybe like O'Duracon.
That's
I'm
actually.
trying to work backwards.
I just looked it up, and Durkin with a K is an alternative version of Durkin with a C, and it's either O'Duracon or MacDuracon. So you're on the right track.
I'm on the right path here. Yeah, because I have to try and find other variations of my brain before but like I say, I know Durkin is so I'll just go for it first. So the Durkin will be an English surname as well. I'm not sure of it. I don't think, like I say, any spelling variations, they're all interchangeable, but I'm not sure. Durkin in it's like DERKIN would be like a normal way for like the English branch of it. So the O'Duracons are from Sligo area. So part of the I believe they're part of the they're actually part of the who in Sligo the O'Haras. They're the O'Duracons are a branch of the O'Haras. I'm pretty sure there's more branches in. They may have gone to Antrim with the O'Haras. The O'Haras split into two branches, and one went to Antrim. So you may find the a branch in Antrim as well if they've split after the Duracon surname has existed. So obviously, if they split before, if the O'Hara split to Antrim and Sligo, and the name didn't exist at that time. I don't know when the eponym came about and when the surname was created. But if they split afterwards, you may find some in Antrim are part of that. But then again, I'm not aware of how connected the O'Haras of Sligo and the O'Haras of Antrim are. So there could have been continuous movement. But you're looking Sligo Mayo if they were because they're a branch of the O'Haras. And then you'll probably find a few like Owen said in sort of English held areas and like Tipperary and stuff like that. So that's the O'Duracons. So if they definitely, Owen says it's definitely a variation of O'Duracon. So if that's true, then they're a branch of the O'Haras.
Aye, Duraclaw of Mayo Branch. Oh, that's interesting. Um, because there's what was it called? If you go into the old Google machine, it pops up that there is, where was I? The origins of them are up in around the Mayo Sligo area, which is interesting because that's where my mother's family's from as well. My mother's family is actually up around Sligo, but she's a Quinn, and what was it? The Quins up around the Sligo area, they reckon is related to Con of the Hundred Battles. I don't know if that's the same with the Duracon as well, if they have relations going back there. Who's the dominant king group? Actually, this is a question there. It's the O'Reillys that are the dominant king group up around the Sligo region, isn't it?
No, Sligo's across. The problem is, right. So Sligo is and always is and Owen's actually said this before on another live as
Yeah.
well. It's the pathway to Donegal from the south. So what you have is you have Sligo is just constantly changing hands between the Ken O'Connell, who the O'Donnells, the Fiacra, who are like the likes of like the O'Dowds, and then you got the Lunia, the Leany, who are like the O'Haras in there. You got the Ibreen, who are just down to the south of them. So you Sligo is continuously in its history contested. And then the Fitzgeralds end up owning land in Sligo too. So far removed from their lands in Kildare and Munster. They own land there around the 14th century. So because the Battle of Ballyshannon in 1247 is they've got lands there at that time. So yeah, it's a hotly contested area throughout its history. So it would be very hard. You would just have to kind of rely on the main families of the area and their genealogies. So like the O'Connor Sligos, their Ibreen, all these sort of families. You'd have to rely on their own personal genealogies, which we all know can be heavily rewritten for propaganda purposes. So
for sure, that would explain a lot. I think the fact that area is constantly contested.
Just in relation to Sligo, because it was important, and because it was between different much more powerful lordships, especially Tyrconnell. It's like you have it as Michal was saying, it changes a lot because the O'Donnells, they always wanted to push downwards into Connacht. They always claimed lordship over Connacht, which is why you find in the 9 Years' War, you find Reggie O'Donnell raiding down as far as Thomond, as Clare. And he pretty soon, he moved into Sligo very quickly. Sligo town gets burnt, and the Sligo Abbey and the cows, they get burnt, ruined a lot because O'Donnell is wanting it. The English are trying to hold it against him. The Battle of the Curlew Mountains actually occurred because I think Granuail's son, what's his name? He was a Burke, Nalong, Tibbet Nalong. He was being besieged in Sligo, and the English were going to try and rescue him, and they became a cropper. And like O'Rourke at times would have pushed into Sligo. The various Burkes in Mayo would have pushed into Sligo. So it's kind of between everybody, and always getting other bigger lords are always interested in
it. Fascinating stuff.
Just last language again. A question I'd never heard of. Nick Gillavihel, or Vickle. Nicola Vickle. Did you ever hear the theory that the Manx language is the lost Irish dialect of Leinster? I never heard that theory. To me, Manx is the same as like the Irish language
Yeah.
in and Scots Gaelic is slightly different. And you had a former Gaelic in Manx in the
Mm.
Isle of Man. I wouldn't say it's the lost dialect of Leinster, and
It's kind of
it
weird
would
how he
have.
says it. Like, go
Yeah,
on.
I am
But
sure it was its own dialect of Gaelic, its own.
Yeah.
You could even call it its own language because, like, when did Latin turn into French, into Spanish, into Portuguese, into Italian? So,
Mm.
and Manx, I'm sure it had a lot of Norse words because like the Isle of Man was a very very important place for the Norse, and there
Mm.
would have been a lot of them there. It would have picked up Norse words,
Yeah.
I
and
will
probably some.
say there is a lost dialect of Manx Ulster Irish on
Mm.
the arts around the area of Lecale, Arts Peninsula. So around between Downpatrick, Portaferry, on the Arts Peninsula, there is a lot of there's a few Irish surnames in that area, native Irish surnames that are
Mm.
due to the translation imply a Manx sort of link. So,
Mm.
and in some of the locations. So, obviously, that dialect has gone because it was very small area, and that area was heavily, sort of colonized by the Savages, who are a Norman family, and then, other families came afterwards, like the Wards and stuff. But yeah, so there are these small dialects that do exist all over Ireland, the Gaelic speaking world.
I'm glad to see you're being very very strong, very nationalistic. There, you said the Arts Peninsula was colonized by savages. Whose name happened to be Savage?
Uh,
Actually, where you know how we get the word vandal from the Vandals, obviously
mm.
during their rampage across the world. I have to. I've never looked at if the savage has anything to do with savages or has had any implication to it in the English language. That would be
No,
interesting to see.
I think it comes it comes from Latin, because
Okay.
like, when I translate from Portuguese and occasionally from Spanish, and they
Mm.
have the word selvagem, which is savage
Uh,
or wild. So I presume the name came first there. So
uh-huh.
the Latin came first.
Mm. 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 Mm.
Noble savages. Well, they
Oh,
were nobles and they were called savage. So, but
a question over from me. Have I missed anything about Dervin McCarver? My dad used to say, if it wasn't for the English, I'd be a princess. Ha ha ha. When it comes down to Dervin, wasn't he the one that was allied to Ivor of Limerick around the 10th century? Was he killed fighting against Brian Bruce forces? I'm
yeah,
assuming he was
yes,
killed going up
yeah,
against Brian Brew.
yeah, killed by Brian Boru before. Obviously, it all kicked off. But then his son, I believe, ends up fighting at the Battle of Clontarf for Brian.
Oh, yeah, yeah, which makes sense because of the fact that they were subjugated at that point.
Hmm.
That whole bloody thing was a massive, like, because it's very funny today because we look back today and we see, Vikings versus Irish. And in fact, as the comment section has pointed out there, that's not the case at all. That we should really look at it more as clan fighting more than anything else because this kicks off because of a blood feud between Brian Brew and Ivor of Limerick, and then there's blood feuds kicking off left, right, and centre around the Clare Limerick area. Oh, and Tipperary as well with Cashel, which is very interesting in itself because of the fact that we, most of the time kind of zoom out and look at it from a perspective of Irish versus Viking rather than kind of zooming into it and looking into all of these little Tuat factions, the clans, as we say on YouTube these days, which makes a far more interesting conversation. especially when we look at it, who has a blood feud against who and why things have ended up the way they are today. Because, as the comment section pointed out, if it wasn't because of these blood feuds around the 10th century that crippled a lot of these Tuits, especially going into the Norman invasion of Ireland, the history of Ireland definitely would have been different for sure, on who would have ended up where for sure. Owen, is there anything else you'd like to add on to that, or you're nice and relaxed?
No, that's fine. Someone's just asking about the Lucht Tiha.
Mm.
Who were the Lucht Tiha and what did they wear? Um, as far as I know, they were like the specialized, the specialized, not servants. They were sort of lesser families who worked for a more powerful lord.
Mm.
Yeah, I think you could say, for example, we mentioned the O'Hagans and O'Donnellys. They were the Luctaic of the O'Neills, but I don't really understand what did they wear. Like they would have worn
Maybe
the
it's in
same clothes as
reference.
everybody else.
It
It
depends
could
what.
be in reference
Yeah.
because a lot of family, like a lot of, you're seeing a lot of secondary sources and a lot of online media about families only being allowed to, certain ranks of family only being able to wear certain colors.
Well, that's
Uh,
in Fergus Kelly's early Irish law. But
yeah.
the thing is about what clothing people are wearing and stuff. It depends what era you're talking about, because Fergus Kelly's early Irish law is only talking about the eras between around the 7th century up to around the 12th century. And the problem is, as myself and Rachel from the Creative Contessa have talked about this a few times, is that laws of colors change over time. For example, yellow, saffron yellow, becomes far more important in the 16th century. Like, many people have this idea that the Irish, especially much more of the warrior class of the Irish, are all going around in saffron yellow in the 7th and 8th century, which isn't true. If you're looking at Fergus Kelly's early Irish law, they're looking into the much more noble colors at the time. Like, yellow isn't that important in early Irish, and early medieval Ireland, but yellow under saffron becomes very, very important going into the 16th century. It's the same thing with the. I was being asked this yesterday as well, off the guys and stuff. They were asking me about the what was it called, loose clothing that you see in the 16th century, and would have that been the case during the early medieval period? No, clothes were much more tighter going into the early medieval period. However, I will say going into the high Middle Ages, we can see clothing get much, much more looser again, and get way looser going into the late medieval period. And then we just get these big, massive wizard sleeves going into the Renaissance, into the 16th century and stuff. So the thing I'd have to add on to that is how, what era you're talking about, because clothing in Ireland changes a lot during those periods and stuff. If you're talking about the early medieval period, you want to look at Fergus Kelly's early Irish law, or you want to look at Fergus Kelly's early Irish farming, where they go through the various colours and stuff there, and gives you a small little idea of what people are wearing. If you're also talking about the early medieval period as well, the Tomba Cooley is very good. Gives us somewhat of a fair idea of what people are wearing. However, a lot of the stuff is still very questionable today, such as leather armor, for example. So far, we have found zero evidence in Ireland for leather armor. I know there's someone who experiments with armor and stuff in France right now during the High Middle Ages, is arguing that people, and he's winning the argument so far, that people did have leather armor in the around the 13th century, and then it kind of what's it called, goes into the full plate armor. However, when it comes down to the argument of the early medieval period and the wearing of leather armor, what was it called? It's very, very debatable, because although it's documented in Tomba Cooley, so far we have found zero evidence of leather armor in what was it called, Ireland, during those periods from the 7th century all the way up to the 11th century. Most likely, and what we can prove as being fact, is from Gammonson, which is padded armor. There is padded armor; it's documented, and we do have finds to padded armor in around the whole region of the North Atlantic, including Ireland, of padded armor definitely being worn, and it's so easy to make as well compared to leather armor. Leather armor is very questionable because it's difficult. It's very from the testing what we've done so far on leather armor. It's very uncomfortable to wear, and on top of that as well, so we have no fines. Very difficult to produce, and on top of that as well, very uncomfortable. So when you do boil the armor and make it could the chafing it causes is very uncomfortable compared to Gabinson padded armor. Padded armor, so far in the argument, is also very likely because of the fact it is comfortable. We have plenty of source material on it, and we have actual finds around it as well. So although people in the comment section there is arguing and debating if they didn't or didn't have leather armor, it's trying to find the facts to it. So it is in the Tomba Cooley. So you should definitely read the Tomba Cooley, but just keep in mind the facts that I put there in front of you. Finally,
if I could just add something there.
Yeah, go on there, on.
Okay, when you're talking about Fergus Kelly, just because a law says something,
yeah,
it doesn't mean that this was obeyed. Like
Yeah.
the famous statutes of Kilkenny said English people can't speak Irish. They
Yeah.
did. So my feeling is about like this thing about colors. In a way, they're copying the Romans because in the Romans only the emperor could wear purple, and there were other things as well. It would have been something indicative. Whether it would have happened or not, we don't know. And yeah, I think it's very important to point out that things change. Like sort
Yeah.
of look at clothing at the moment. Look at clothing in the 1960s, the 1950s, the 1980s, 1990s. Every decade, it's very different. And then just the final point, Stephen says, I thought the saffron yellow kilt was a revivalist thing for the 19th century. It was, and it's still going. I think in the Irish Army, they use it for pipers. And then
and the British Army as well, for the Irish regiments as well. Use it.
Okay, and then I've seen in the past Irish dancing before it became all fashionable. Sometimes a boy would wear kind of the saffron kilt.
I wore a saffron kilt when I did Irish dance as a child. Yes. I will just say, because we were talking just there a minute ago about Donovan McCahill. Someone stated there, Sheepdog was like, my surname is Cahill, one of the oldest in Ireland, I think. No, I mean there's five known Cahill branches: McCahill or Cahill or Cahill, or its variations. There's five now, so automatically you've got 5 different origin points and 5 different dates from which the earliest mentions of the Cahills are the O'Nocta Lochlean branch, who are down in Kerry before they're replaced by the O'Donohues. It's in the 1030s, I think, the name starts to appear as a. But even then, I'm not sure it's a hereditary surname. It could just be being used as a patronym. So you're looking, the earliest will be the 1030s for the surname even being written down, which is already 80 years plus. But it's smack bang in the time period where surnames are starting in Ireland. So it's possibly one of the main group, but we've already got, by this stage, we've already got the O'Cannons, we've already got the O'Clearys, and a few others. You find actually that most prominent families adopt surnames later than smaller families because they don't need, the O'Briens don't start adopting the surname till his grandson or great grandson, because everyone knows who they already are, so they don't need these surnames to attach any prestige to themselves. They're already, everyone knows who Donnchadh, is, and he doesn't need these sort of like extra frivolities to emphasize his lineage. But the next one, the only other name I know of Cahill being mentioned is in the 13th century. Is the Kennel A of Galway. So the only time they mention a separate branch. So yeah, but it's found in Galway. I think there's 2 or 3 branches in Galway: Tipperary, County Clare, Kerry, and Roscommon. So there's 5 branches, unrelated, all from different king groups. But so yeah, not the oldest, but certainly happening around the start of the rest of Ireland starting to adopt surnames.
Yeah. Just one more question before we finish up now, because it's going on to what was it called? You guys be looking to go to bed and stuff. This one is interesting, right? And I want to take it from the perspective of the 13th century, right? Was Connacht a kingdom of its own? And I find this one very funny just because of the way that the king group system works in Ireland, and where it kind of blurs the lines of what is a border and what's not a border. And we were even talking a little bit about this early on, where the old French families come into Ireland and they bring in the county system, but the county system doesn't really come in until around the 16th century and stuff. So going into the 13th century, where I start to see historic. Now I still have to go through the annals for this, and I've got a class for this for tomorrow and stuff. But regardless, when I've been going through other historians and stuff, they constantly talking about the 13th century, when you have the old French fighting the men of Connacht, in particular, the De Burghs under the lordship of Ireland, are fighting the O'Connors. They constantly turn around and refer to the realm of the O'Connors as the kingdom of Connacht, right? To my understanding, what the hell is a blasted kingdom? Because when people are thinking of kingdoms, they're thinking of a centralized realm that has a king at the top of it, and then we have all these nobles under it. And I don't think that's how medieval Ireland operated. To my understanding, it's the king group that's tied together through fosterage, hostage, and adoption and stuff, which blurs the line of the realm of the Gaelic during this period. So, and I find it very strange that you have, quote unquote, the kingdom of Connacht, and then you have the kingdom of Tyrone with the O'Neills and stuff during this period. When, from my perspective, those borders and lines which would be, very, very blurred. So the question I do find very interesting, and I don't mind if you want to cover it there on, or if Michal wants to expand on it. But was the Connacht of Kingdom its own thing in Ireland? I do find that interesting. Do you want to expand on that
I would
one?
kind of say yes and no. It was a provincial kingdom.
Yeah.
And you can see in Gaelic history, in Gaelic mythology, such, the Clonbog Culia, Maeve, Queen of Connacht. And then if you look at archaeology, you have Tara, you have Cashel, Rathcrowan in Connacht, Owen Maca in Ulster. So all of these were sites that well predated Gaelic Ireland. They go back much further. They go back to the Bronze Age, if not further. But to the Gaelic Irish, they were important. They were important symbolically, and they became the mythological capitals of these provinces. Now, most of the provinces were more of the kingship of the provinces was more of an aspiration, sort of, and it moved, sort of, because in Ulster, what is now Ulster, the Ullid get pushed aside by the O'Neills. But the O'Neills, for a long time, they use Ileach, Aileach. They only kind of make a semi-claim towards Ulster after the Normans. But then I think once you have English language sources or later medieval sources, it's because the Normans they don't know the background. They don't know that traditionally there were the 5 provinces, and if you look at it, you can actually probably find more. but they're looking at the powerful groups. Tyrone was always powerful under from when the Normans came in until 1603. Uh,
Mm.
Connacht, because they're not, I think probably they're not exactly it's sure of who they're fighting in a way. The
Yeah.
O'Connors would have, when the Normans came in, the O'Connors would have claimed kingship of Connacht.
Mm.
Leinster goes back quite a bit, like sort of one of the reasons, the trigger in a way of Clontarf was a rebellion by the King of Leinster.
Yeah.
Um, but that Leinster is a much smaller Leinster. It doesn't include
Mm.
Dublin. It doesn't include Meath.
Yeah.
And then Munster itself breaks up.
Mm.
Like Desmua, the west. You have Thomond, which is, I think Thomond is south. Is it south? Oh no, sorry. Thomond is West Munster and Desmond is South Munster,
Mm.
especially after the Normans come in. So it's, yes, there was a kingdom of Connacht, but it's more complicated.
Mm.
Like you because you have, especially from you have the Burgos becoming the Burkes, and they split into different ones. You have, as we mentioned, I in Sligo, O'Connor, Sligo, O'Rourke, etc. You have the other ones. But that's
Mm. Mm.
that's a long-winded way of saying yes and no.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I just will just add in because you said weren't quite sure who. Obviously, we know like obviously you have the in Ulster you have the Enil pushing out the Ullid, and well, who are the Ullid? That's a long civil war between the Dalnaruja and the Dalfiata. Um, so there's a lot of groups in Connacht. It's primarily the Ifigra are the dominant group in Connacht, and then the Alo, and
Mm.
then the Ibreen start to dominate by the 7th century. So so you can just sort of see, um, uh, they have the same issues that every other group's having, where these dominant king groups are trying to dominate these regions. And like you said there, that earlier, Cormac McSparran, there's actually a talk on this that the five provincial kingdoms may actually obviously predate Gaelic Ireland and Ireland, and that they are a earlier sort of Bronze Age. These kingdoms have sort of existed in concept and in idea and learning memory as a
Mm.
from the Bronze Age, but they're never. That not to get it like focused on what medieval kingdoms, these
Mm.
centralized states. These are just almost like territorial markers, of groups of people. So, um, but yeah, the just because I like I said, you weren't quite sure who the original players were at the top of your head. So I just Steve Biekra at the early heavyweights, the Alo, and then obviously the Breen.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, and I disagree with what Davy Jones is saying there because I can't see any form of nationalism whatsoever. And it's so strange because there doesn't seem to be any loyal, although, these king groups of Gaelic clans or whatever you want to refer to as, to simplify the conversation, although there's a king group system there, they're supposed to tie all these factions together. They always seem to be chopping each other up to be the head of, the head Taoiseach or early on, re of the Tuat. And I can't see, like, if there was a form of nationalism there, when you saw the English coming in here, who are the old French and stuff, you think they would all come together, fly the big tricolor and stuff, and that doesn't happen. So I would definitely disagree that there is any forms
Sorry.
of nationalism or anything like.
One thing you have to be careful with the word nationalism, because the word
Yeah,
nationalism is attached to your idea of a nation
yeah.
slash nation state.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
Look at anywhere in the before the present, and
Yeah,
you will find divides. What did the Romans spend more of their time doing when they weren't conquering people? What were they doing? They were fighting themselves.
yeah.
Uh, I was working. I was listening to some podcasts about Roman history, and
Mm.
they're fighting themselves nonstop. Everywhere is
Yeah.
fighting themselves. Yeah, there wasn't no. It took like centuries for strong states to emerge,
Mm.
but way before that, you find identities. And quite often it starts off as cultural. In Gaelic Ireland, perhaps because there's a shared language and it's a small enough island, you have a Gaelic Irish identity.
Yeah, you do.
And that it's like we can't go into it's we can come back to that another time.
Yeah.
Is that identity a sign of early nationalism? It depends what you mean by early nationalism.
Mm.
It's an identity that existed. Were they demanding a nation state? No, because no one knew what that
Yeah.
meant.
Yeah.
Most people didn't exactly know what state meant.
Mm.
And
Mm.
yeah, just Stephen asked the question. I think he's annoyed that I forgot to mention Ormond among the divisions of Munster, which
Oh
I
well.
think Ormond is East Munster and Thomond is actually North Munster.
Mm, 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 mm.
Even though I think parts of Tipperary are much more to the north than Clare.
Oh.
I will
Yeah,
just
well,
say,
they.
yeah, when you touch on nationalism, again, this debate gets stripped back another layer when you
Mm.
think that even the topic and the discussion, the academic discussion around nationalism, doesn't agree because it's like up to I know of three schools of thought on what is nationalism and how it originates: ethnic or cultural, romantic, and uh, civic nationalism or political nationalism. So there's different, and these are all most of this works from the like 19th and 20th century scholars, and they're writing about when nationalism forms. You get these different schools of thought. So depending on what school of thought you adhere to, on the idea of when nationalism even came into the human conscience,
Mm.
it can be and how you what you use to define nationalism um, is then will skew your thought on when it founded. So you've just got to be careful of that too. So again, if you're deciding when if there's a nationalist identity, it almost depends on what school of thought you want to and what logic you want to apply to that argument to get the answer that you're looking for. So again, it's not even agreed on in academic circles what really is like nationalism. Or depend well,
Yeah.
it isn't, it isn't.
Yeah. 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 Okay, right. We could literally talk all day and all night, especially going into much more deeper topics now of nationalism and stuff. But I'll quickly cut off there, guys, before we go too wild. Right, guys, thank you so much for all the support this week. We got a lot of stuff, people saying about us all looking like serial killers. Let me get my phone for next week and I'll test to see if it comes out better and hopefully it will improve the viewership and stuff for you guys, especially who are supporting the channel. If you guys want to support us, try to help us get a new camera and all that kind of stuff, definitely subscribe to us. There's a big subscription thing over on my channel, Irish Medieval History. You can also go over to my Patreon as well at Irish Medieval History and support me there. Also, on top of that, guys, if you're over at the Patreon as well, you can do classes as well every Sunday night, which is tomorrow night. I do classes on Irish medieval history. Tomorrow, I will be covering the fighting between the De Burghs and the O'Connors during the 13th century. So, if you're interested in any of that, head on over to my Patreon. It's about 20 quid a month for the classes. You can donate wherever you want, it doesn't really matter. Or just have an old nosy as well at Irish Medieval History on Patreon. Or you can click into my channel to have an old nosy. There should be a link to that one. Owen, do you still have that buy me a coffee? And
Yeah,
how do we get onto that?
yeah, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account. It's on the bottom of all my videos.
Mm.
I have a new video. It came out 2 days ago. I've just finished a series on Newgrange and the Newgrange world. So it's
Oh, thank you so
before
much for
this.
that.
So if you want to have a look there, so my buy me a coffee account is there. I think it's buy me a coffee first fast or something like that. But you'll
Mm.
find it on my channel. And if you could subscribe, eventually I'll get around to either a Patreon or whatever, some other way. But at the moment, I don't have time.
That's grand. And Mihal, how do we support your work, especially to do with all the different families and clans and dynasties of Ireland and the research that you're doing there?
I mean, same way as anyone else. Just watch the videos, like the videos, share the videos if you can. Comment below, get the algorithm, chewing it through. Uh, as for I have members and super chats memberships. So if you want to on YouTube and TikTok, I would recommend the YouTube one. They're cheaper. Um, and come along, and I will start up the members only lives again sometime soon. I've got some stuff going on at the minute that I need to get sorted first, but primarily every week I do a members only live, uh, and for my subscribers. So feel free. But the main thing is just watch the videos. It's just fall asleep with it playing. Play the whole video.
Just keep watching my videos.
Just keep watching them.
All right, guys. Thanks very much for all the support, and
Philip, just
see you
before
later.
you go, can you throw the names of our channels on the chat? I don't have access to the chat. Sort
Yeah,
of.
I think if you just the spelling there, can you get something black or something there so people can see the spelling for your channel?
Both.
FORAS and then the new word FEASA
Yeah, happy
for his
days.
fast.
And the spelling there for Mihal, you can actually see on the page there as well. Clans and Dynasties, Mihal's
I
channel.
can't even. No, it's all over the place. No, I can't even.
Yeah, the rights and lefts are fecked on it. We'll try and fix that. And
If
for anyone
anyone,
jumping
and
over to my channel there,
all subscriptions are very welcome. All subscriptions are very welcome.
happy days. Okay, other than that, guys, thanks very much and Slán go Walia. See you
Slán.
guys.
Bye.
Slán.